So, how has your simplification been going? Anybody been doing anything? Good, well. So, it's becoming more and more clear to me that what we're not talking about is attacking your closet, really. I mean, we are, but we're not. We're not just talking about going through the garage or through the storage building and ferreting out things, and it's not that, really, although there's a value to that. What we're really talking about is peering inside and trying to understand what's going on and looking at it in a way that allows us to simplify what's going on. Now, if we can do that, the other things that are kind of jumbled and cluttered, those things will clear up. So what I think is true is that, you know, the external clutter that I have all around me is an indication of what's going on inside of me. And so I'm not like an organizational guru. I'm not going to tell you what to do or how to do that and how to arrange your space. And what I know is that people like you and me, us, we exhibit signs of an overly complicated life all the time. We're overscheduled, we're overworked, we're exhausted, we're scattered, we're kind of isolated. We're a little bit overwhelmed with all of the stuff, not just physical stuff, but the emotional, mental stuff as well. It's one thing to clean out a closet, which is a great idea, right? It's another thing to clean out a room inside your heart that's been kind of cluttered and locked away for a long time. Which one is easier? Yeah. Of course. I find sometimes that my interior is so cluttered that it's almost paralyzing. Have you ever looked at a big job like clean the garage or whatever it is, and it's just so big that you don't know where to start? My son's room. Yes. And so what I want to do is talk this morning a little bit more about cleaning up some of the stuff that's going on. And I think that the activity that we're involved in, as I said before, and this is really review, is just like three areas. First of all, there's uncluttering, and then there's untangling, and then there's subtracting. So let me tell you a story about my week this week. I attacked some projects at my place. One of them is a fence on the north side of our property, which has been neglected for, 20 years. And we've lived there for almost, I don't know how long. 8 years. So finally, that fence, and it's just, you didn't even really know there was a fence there, right? Just these, like, ivy and weeds, and so I just started. After work this week, I would, one night just kind of attacked it, and then pretty soon the week progresses, and I'm borrowing green bins from people. You know that kind of a project? So now there's 4 green bins filled with vines. And I can't roll up my sleeves. Otherwise you'd wonder. And here's what I found. There is a fence under all of those weeds. Now it's all gone. It's empty. It's like almost blank now. There is a fence under all of that stuff. The fence is in very bad condition. Needs help. But when you sit at my backyard and my back picnic table now, and you look over there, you see something that we've never seen before. And it's not just the fence, but there, believe it or not, is Mount Burdell. Like, I knew it was there somewhere. Now, that's the work that we're talking about internally. You begin to kind of unclutter and tear things out, and then you start to untangle, and then you begin to kind of subtract, and what you find is both new beauty and possibility deep inside your heart, but you also find repair that needs to be made. Now, the uncluttering, the subtracting, and the untangling didn't cause the damage that the repair needs to fix. It just uncovered the damage that was there. Does that make sense? You see, if I allow myself to be just kind of completely tangled inside my heart in this hairball, I don't even know what has to be done because it's obscured. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm interested in. Now, I've been reading a lot and kind of doing a lot of investigation on what this means and how we do this together. And there are a lot of different ways, but I've been examining the way that Jesus talked about this, especially in the Gospels. And this week I want to take a look at two passages, really. One in Luke chapter 3 and one in Matthew chapter 6. First, the Luke 3 passage, and I'm going to read this to you. Luke is recording the words of not Jesus, but John the Baptizer. Now, John the Baptizer showed up, and he was a very interesting man, lived in the desert, probably was an Essene, which is a very strict kind of sect of men and women who took a vow of kind of isolation and poverty. And he came out of the desert one day, and the scriptures describe him in a way that we could only describe today as someone who would be terribly frightening. Dressed in this camel hair robe, leather belt around his waist. He had taken, at his birth, a Nazirite vow, which means he had never cut his hair. So 30 years old. Now, they didn't have the best hair care products in the first century. So it's a remarkable image comes to my mind when this man comes out of the desert and starts talking about God. Let me read to you. He gives this sermon, and then people ask a great question. What shall we do then? The crowd asked. John answered, and by the way, that's almost always the result of a good sermon. It's not, oh, that was interesting. I like sermons, don't you? And I have to tell you that the worst possible thing that you could say to me after this is over is, boy, that was really nice. Just grab my heart and tear it out. You can argue with me about something I said. But just don't say, oh, wow, that was special. That was a special time. So every preacher wants people to say, what should we do? You're compelling us. And that's what they say to John. John answered, the man with 2 tunics should share one with him who has none, and the one who has food should do the same. The tax collectors also came to be baptized. What should we do? Don't collect any more than you're required to, he told them. Then some soldiers asked him, and what should we do? He replied, don't extort money and don't accuse people falsely. Be content with your pay. It's pretty interesting. Now, what does that mean? Here's what John is saying is, your lives are too complicated. And 3 groups of people say, well, what should we do? How do we simplify? I mean, how do we kind of untangle, subtract, unclutter our lives and begin to live the kind of life that brings this deep sense of the word that John uses in all 3 cases is contentment. To the people, he said, I want you to be content. Share. You have more than you need. Share. Nobody look around. The person is embarrassed enough. Look forward, eyes straight forward. Now I know who it is, and I'll address that later. So, I mean, that's a good word. Now, here's the deal. You have to understand that the number of coats you have will not make you content, right? So John is saying, listen, if you have 2 of something and you don't need one, then just give one away. And the beautiful thing is that that's not like what you should do. It's what these people should do. But that's not you. What John is saying is, and the beautiful thing about this passage is, three different kinds of people come to John. The answer is the same. I want you to be content, but the activity is different, which means it's not like a one-size-fits-all. The tax collectors come to him, and they say, what should we do to be content? And John says, stop your scheming. Now, here's the interesting thing. Tax collecting in the first century was different than today. You collected tax for Rome, and you made your living by taking more than you were required to. So in essence, what John is saying is, don't take any more than you're required to anymore. And they're going, well, what is in this for me? Now, that's an interesting question. Whenever you ask that question, you're headed for trouble. Well, what's in this for me? Soldiers. Now, Roman soldiers were an imposing lot. They had almost full reign. They could do anything that they wanted to do. And the soldiers who were compelled by what John said, and what should we do? John's talking about contentment again, and he says this, don't live by power. How else is a soldier supposed to live? Don't use your power. Don't extort money, and be content with your wages. Now, they didn't make much. They made enough by using their power. Remarkable, really. The concept is the same. Simplify. Cut to the chase. Untangle this mess that's in your heart. But the resultant activities are very different. And this is, the only reason I bring this up is to bring this point up right here. All of us, if we begin to simplify, you'll see different results. Some will change what they drive. Some won't. Some will change where they spend their money. Some won't. Some will change what they do with their time. Some won't. And there isn't one way to move through this so that you begin to say, well, so-and-so must not be listening to the sermons because, I've done this and they haven't done anything like this. That's an interesting way of thinking. And it's an indication of just this deep sense of unhealth. And we're going to talk more about that. The beautiful thing about a life with God is that it's your life with God. And that what you hear, see, that's the thing. What you hear, the question is always, what should we do? And the answer is almost never, the answer I get is almost never the answer that you get. Does that make sense? What should I do is not what should we do, or what should you do? And we can't spend a lot more time on that, but we will. By the way, we're coming up to this great season of the year called Lent. Lent is just a Latin way of saying spring, but it's a way of kind of ramping into Good Friday and Easter. And I want to give you a save the date of Wednesday, February 18th. Wednesday, February 18th is Ash Wednesday. And we'll be here that evening at 7 for a service. And we're going to be doing Lent this year in a way that we've never done it before. And I say that only to say that my hope is that we'll lean into it together. One of the things that we're going to do this year for Lent is ask people to make a 6-week commitment during the 40 days of Lent. There's 46 days of Lent, 46 days in the season, but only 40 days of Lent. Because Sunday is never a fast day, it's never a Lent day. Sunday is always a celebration day. But over those 6 weeks, we're going to have community groups, just a 1 hour, 20-minute group meeting once a week. And we're going to ask everyone to commit to that. Once a week, I'm going to go to this place. We're going to spend about an hour 15 together. I'll watch a brief video, have kind of a discussion, check in on how our Lenten activities are going, and then we're in and we're out. And so much more about that coming up. But I'm anticipating that this will be an opportunity for us to change and grow. Good Friday, so here I am talking about Good Friday. You can tell what I'm always studying like 6 or 8 weeks ahead. So can I give you my Good Friday sermon right now? I'm really excited about it. So Easter, or Good Friday, and this is what we're going to talk about this year in Lent. It's death is put to death by death. And that means nothing, I know right now, but it's what happened. And it has to do with this Simplify series, because there are things in me that need to be pulled out, weeded out, yanked from its roots. And that's what we're talking about. We're going to be talking about it during that 40-day period in a more intense way. So, save that date. If you've never been a part of an Ash Wednesday service, it would be a good thing. So as I've moved through this material over the last few months, it seems to me that there are a few areas of entitlement. Everybody know what the sense of entitlement is? We have these senses of entitlement that I want us to begin to weed through. They make these senses of entitlement that I have make it very difficult for me to simplify. And I want to talk about these three of them. There's probably more, but I want to talk about three of them. The first one is this: I deserve, and that's what an entitlement is, right? I deserve whatever it is I feel entitled to. I deserve it. And as Americans, I mean, we're all about rights, the rights of the individual, and I have the right to, and so we kind of raise our children in an atmosphere, and it's a good thing. Human rights, I'm all for them. But we've taken it a step or 2 or 20 further, and so I have the right. The first sense of entitlement that we need to think about is this one. I have the right to be recognized. Now, by recognized, I mean appreciated, acknowledged. Now, you think, wow, that's it seems kind of reasonable that I have the right to be acknowledged. I suppose it is at some point, at some level. But we're not talking about about what seems reasonable. We're talking about what the rabbi had to say. And I want to read in Matthew chapter 6. He says this: "Be careful not to do your acts of generosity before men to be seen by them. If you do, you've lost any reward. And when you pray, don't be like the hypocrites, for they love to pray standing in the synagogues and on the street corners to be seen by people. And when you fast or give something up, don't look somber as the hypocrites do, for they disfigure their faces to show men they're fasting. I tell you the truth, they're going to get nothing for it." This is a remarkable thing. What Jesus is saying is, do what you should do. Do the right thing. And if nobody notices, it's okay. That's not easy, is it? You ever think to yourself, well, a thank you would have been nice. Now, I'm not talking about parenting and teaching our children good manners. I'm not talking about that. That's a whole other subject, and yes, please and thank you. What I'm talking about is just the way we do life. When you're coming out of Safeway or Harvest or Lucky and you're, bringing your cart to the cart corral. Now that's going the extra mile. I didn't just leave it one wheel hooked over the curb like this jerk did. I'm actually returning it to the cart corral. And it makes me feel just like Mother Teresa, right? And so I'm returning my cart to the cart corral. Courteous, I'm being courteous. And then someone says, "Oh, can I have that cart?" By all means. And I just want someone to say, "Thank you for returning your cart to the cart corral." Now that's an innocent and inane example. Men, how about this one? You feel very generous and you do the dishes. I don't know what it's like in your land, but you feel very generous and you do the dishes, and then you sit around just waiting for what? "Oh, you've done the dishes! Thank you!" Woe be unto the man who says, I did the dishes. Again, another very innocent and inane example. Yeah, maybe it's the other way around. I don't know. But insert your family of choice. If your desire is to be recognized, and you feel like it's a right, there's a lot of weeding that has to be done. It represents a sense of anxiety. People who live like this will be jealous, first of all. They'll be anxious, and they'll be very, very, very busy. But their busyness will be to be noticed. Now, it's an insidious thing. Because on one hand, you seem very generous in the way that you live, and you're always giving, you're always serving people, you're always doing whatever you can do, and in your heart of hearts you're saying, notice me, will you notice me? And when it doesn't come, you have this pang, this pain. Ow. Jesus said, be careful when you do your generous acts, be careful when you pray, be careful when you give up something for God, that you don't tell anyone about it. And that's a remarkable thing. We're coming into Lent, and some of us are going to be giving up things, and some of us are going to be adopting some new habits, and the important thing is not to say, I'm on day 36 and I'm still doing it. Now, I get that. You know, there's like a 101 level of this where you need encouragement from people, and I get that. But deep in your heart, in the depths of your soul, if what we need is people saying, well done, there is a deep immaturity there that needs to be kind of uncluttered and weeded through. Now, I've been doing this for a long time, but I felt that sense this week when a friend had a very good and fortunate experience, and I wished it was me. Now, here's the beautiful thing. I've been doing a lot of uncluttering, and so I was able to see the damage to my fence. You get me? And I looked at that and I said, I'm jealous. And I talked to my spiritual director and said, where does that come from? And he said, it comes from here. And he's very brutal with me, because we know each other. It's 10th commandment, Ev. Do not covet. You're coveting. And, you know, I would never talk to you like that. I think you'd be a little more gentle with me. And so we had this conversation. It happened rather quickly. I got this horrible sense of, where did that come from? My Wu Wei, remember? My Wu Wei was way off. And because the clutter was cleared and the weeds were kind of pulled away, I could see there was a problem with the fence. And because I saw the problem, I called someone, emailed actually, and I got kind of repair work being started. And actually what happens is when you feel that way, it's an amazing opportunity to make repairs that you wouldn't have made, that needed to be made. Does that make sense? So you can't say, oh, I don't feel jealous. No, if you feel jealous, embrace it. And say, I feel jealous. Now that's different than saying, I'm a horribly jealous person, because I'm not. But that day I felt jealous, and I didn't like it because it shouldn't be there. So what I realize is I have deep inside of me an entitlement that says, I deserve to be recognized. I don't want it, but there's a part of it that's there. Now, my work to get rid of that is different than your work to get rid of it. Life as a performance is a very complicated life. You realize that? Recognize that? If you are living to perform in order to kind of get ovations, that life is very complicated. It's funny when you're coaching a sport. Anybody ever coach anything in here? I had a little stint of coaching girls basketball, and wow, it's late. class, a one-point sermon today. And it's funny when you kind of leave the room, leave the gym for a minute, and the intensity level kind of goes, and you come back in, and everybody now is hustling again. That's what we're talking about. There's a second, and I'm just going to mention these two. I deserve the right to be certain. I deserve to be certain, pardon me. I deserve to be certain about whatever it is we're talking about. Certainty. I love to talk about this. It's the distasteful idea of tension. I don't want to live in tension. I want to know. Now, this is okay if we're talking about heart surgery and you're talking to your surgeon. This is a little bit more difficult when we're talking about God. The most dangerous people in our world today are people who are certain about God. Let that sink in for just a second. Because they think they know what exactly God wants, and when they don't see it happening, they declare a what? Jihad. Your life does not match what my view of your life, or my God's view of your life should be. Now, those are fundamentalists, but fundamentalists of every stripe. What makes a fundamentalist? A fundamentalist is manufactured by someone who is certain that they're right. That's a hard way to live. You ever hear that term, I'd rather be happy than right? It becomes more true the older I get. Billy Joel, one of my favorite artists, sang this song years ago. I forget even what album it's on, but he sang this soul, Shades of Grey. Remember that song? Shades of Grey, wherever I go. It's remarkable. And what he's saying is, the older I get, the less black and white things are. Now, things haven't changed. It's his perspective that's changed. If you deserve to be certain, and that's one of your entitlements, then you're going to live again with anxiety. You're going to live with judgment. And then you're going to use these wonderful things that I love to call clarifying questions. I get these a lot. So we'll talk about what Jesus has to say about don't do your acts of generosity in front of people. Don't let your right hand know what your left hand is doing. And then people will want to ask clarifying questions. Well, does that mean I can't share with my small group? What does that mean? And these clarifying questions are, I guess that they're a healthy conversation, but at the end of the day, the answer is, I don't know. And a better answer is, struggle with it. Deal with it. Live in the tension of not knowing exactly what that means. Here's another good one. Jesus says, love your enemy. Pray for those who use you, and pray for those who say all manner of evil against you and use you. And he goes on and on about this love for enemy. And if someone smacks you on the right cheek, turn to him your left also. And someone says, okay, well, does that mean if someone breaks into my house and is going to harm my family, does that mean I can't do anything? And what do we want? Clarify that. No. It's not my job to clarify that for you. See? He said what he said. So does that mean that? It might. It might not. I don't know. Guess what? There's uncertainty there. The funny thing about it is, usually clarifying questions are leading questions that will bring whoever it is I'm asking them around to believe things the way I do. You ever know someone's asking you questions and there's a trap set somewhere, you just don't know where it is? Yeah. If you start asking a lot of clarifying questions, it's usually because you deserve to be certain about things. And again, there's some things you should be certain about. But there's some things, like God, that you won't. One more. I deserve to be secure. Security, is that all that bad? Jesus says it like this in Matthew chapter 6. Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal, but store up for yourselves treasures in heaven where moth and rust do not destroy and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, that's where your heart is going to be. That's a good one. I love that. What does that mean? Well, there's that clarifying question, isn't it? Here's the idea. Anybody in here own Google stock? Nobody? What a horribly... I figured we were going to cash it in today. Nobody owns Google stock in here. Okay, Apple. Come on. All right, there's a few. Good. Those of you who... I'm not going to embarrass anybody, but those of you who own stock of any kind, do you keep an eye on it? No? All right, good. So, I keep an eye on my investments. It's okay, we should be done by now, so I don't fault you. And I love the duck ring. Oregon. The idea is that wherever you put your investments, you're going to keep an eye on those things. I get that. And it's true. It's not like a debate whether that's true or not. It's completely true. The question is, where am I investing? And I'm not really talking about in money here. If you deserve the right to be secure, I want to be secure, you will be plagued with worry, you'll be plagued with suspicion, and you will be someone who is inundated with accumulation. And guess what? You still won't feel secure. I have some friends who are millionaires, and if I had what they had, I would feel pretty secure. They don't. Why don't they? Well, it's simple, actually. It's simple mathematics. My lifestyle requires an X amount of money to facilitate over the next 25 years until I'm pushing up daisies. Their lifestyle requires 4X. Just because that's the way it works. Life as a series of backup plans is a complicated life. Guys, you can come up. We're done here. Life is a series of backup plans. Okay, if this happens, I'm going to do this. And then if that happens, I'm going to do this. And if A and B happen, then we're going to do this. James, Jesus' half-brother, says, it's ridiculous, those of us who say today and tomorrow we're going to go into such and such a city and buy and sell and get gain, because we don't even know what tomorrow will bring. Our life is just a vapor, like the vapor from a teapot. It appears for a moment, and then it wisps away and is gone. And then James continues, what we ought to say is, if God wills, we will live and do this or that. In other words, it's not up to me. See, a life of faith is not a life of security, like I have this stuff to depend on because what I'm depending on is God. And that's not an easy way to live. Our mad rush for recognition, security, and certainty stems from our need to hear the answer to a very old and deep question. One question. This is it right here. All of us are asking this one question. Do you love me? That's all we ever ask. We ask it to our spouses, we ask it to our children, we ask it to our neighbors, we ask it to our grocer, we ask it to our parents, we ask it to our grandchildren, we ask it to God, we ask it to everyone we see. Do you love me? Do you love me? Do you love me? Do you love me? And the answer to that question is twofold. The response is yes and perhaps. What do you mean by that? Well, if you're asking the question to God, the answer is yes. Let me read you something that Thomas Merton wrote. His alone, God, speaking of gods, is the gentlest of loves, whose pure flame respects all things. God, who owns all things, does not control all things. He never takes them for his own the way we take them for our own and destroy them. He leaves them to themselves. He keeps giving to them, giving them all that they are, but asking no thanks of them, save that they should receive from him and be loved and nurtured by him, and they should increase and multiply and so praise him. He saw that all things were good, and he did not need to enjoy them. He saw that all things were beautiful, and he did not want them for his own. His love is not like our love. His love is unpossessive. His love is pure because it needs nothing. You get that from God. Whether you feel it or not, I get that. But you get it from God. Okay, then where's the perhaps come in? Well, do you get it from people? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. Do you get that kind of love from people? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But here's the point. What control do you have over how people love me or how they love you? None. It's not if you're a better person, people will love you more. If someone doesn't love you, it's because they have a problem. Not because you're unlovable. Because everyone in this room is completely unlovable and completely lovable. Lovable because you're lovable. Unlovable because we're all idiots. And there's nothing I can do to make you love me. There's nothing I can do to make God stop. And so I can rest and begin to uncomplicate. So we have communion this morning. And what I'd like you to do as you come is to think about the love of this one that died. His love was unpossessive. He did what he had to do. And although it was brutal and awful, the remarkable thing, as he's on the cross, he says in Aramaic, my God, why have even you forsaken me?" When Jesus was hanging on the cross, he felt unloved. You realize that? Now, he was loved. Some of you feel unloved this morning, but you are loved. See, the way you feel about it, it's just a sense of entitlement. There's a difference between am I loved or do I feel like I'm loved? That day, Jesus did not feel loved. He felt forsaken by the Father. And yet he wasn't forsaken by the Father. But even he, in that state, felt forsaken. It's complicated. And the one who lived the most uncomplicated life died because that's what he had to do. And he did that with us in mind. And so as you come and take the bread and the juice this morning, my hope is that you will begin to kind of live in the difference between being loved and feeling loved. And know that you are, even if you don't feel like you are. Because that's the beginning of all things. So God help us. On the night that Jesus was betrayed, he took the bread, and when he gave thanks, he broke it and said, "This is my body, which is broken for you. Eat this in remembrance of me." And after the supper, he took the cup, and he said, "This cup is the new promise in my blood. And as often as you eat this bread and drink this cup, you are talking about my death until I return." And so, friends, I ask you to come and break off a piece of bread, dip it in the cup, and enjoy it. But enjoy it because it's an example of what it means to be loved and not just feel loved. Your offerings can go in these baskets as you come. If you've not participated in communion here once before, you're more than welcome to join us. But just watch a couple of people so you know how we do it around here. So come when you're ready, my friends. See, love love can't be earned, right? So there's nothing you can do. There's nothing you can know. And you can't be so responsible that you deserve love. That's not how love works. You get it. That's all. It's yours from the Father. Everybody else, I don't know, but if they're not giving it to you, it's not because it's not a deserved issue. So I'm really glad that you're here today. My hope is that you'll have a good day and that we'll begin to release some of this stuff. So Father, help us to do that. Help us to just be, to know God, even when it doesn't feel that way, to know that you are there and that you love us. To know, Father, that there's nothing we can do, nothing we can be, nothing we can prepare that will make you love us more or less. And actually nothing that we can do, be, or prepare to make anyone else love us, God. We come to you because we need you to help us with this untangling and uncluttering and subtracting. And I pray that you would help us, Father. In Jesus' name, amen. Thanks, you guys. Have a great day.